Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming so early. Today, I think we have a special day, and the idea of this day, and I hope more people will come during the day, is to really create some kind of a discussion about open questions in many directions in education in neuroscience and education in general. And we have 4 different sessions. We'll start with a session about online tools. We'll go from there to collaboration between industry and academy. We'll move back to the academy and discuss academic programs. And we will end up with a special session about clinical neuroscience education, which is becoming a very important issue. And I really would like to urge you to participate actively. So the idea is that every panel will have 4 to 5 speakers that will present their view in 10 minutes. We'll have a panel moderator who will later on, during another 45 minutes, will bring questions that were raised during this discussion and also questions from the audience. And we would like to have as many input as I mentioned yesterday, at least for the student. I think what we're going to do here hopefully will affect positively the way neuroscience education in general is going to be delivered in the next 3, 4, and 10 years from now. So I would like to invite the first moderator, Professor Charles Guttman from Boston University. Please.
Thank you very much, Uri, for the presentation, for the introduction. Just one correction. There is a Boston University, but I'm actually from Harvard University in Boston.
I was trying to see the...
Actually, in Cambridge, whether I'm awake.
Only to try to start the confrontation between the...
Yes. And I enjoy confrontation, especially when I win. So today, I really hope that we will have not a confrontational, but a lively debate at the end of the presentations. We have a very nice and varied panel today. I'd like to just say a very quick word about the structure. I mean, you see here the order is slightly changed compared to what you have in your programs. After each speaker, each panelist will have 10 minutes each to present their point of view. And at the end of the presentations, there will be time for open questions, but we thought we would put up a few leading questions that you see here, and besides keeping your mind free to ask whatever you want to ask, I'd like you to keep these questions in mind also. A little dose of pragmatism so that at the end of this, we hope that we will have some take-home messages, which brings me to the last point before I'll introduce the first speaker, which is student input is crucial. So many young people in here, I really ask you to participate, to give your honest opinion and suggestions, because you are the people who are now in the learning shoes in particular, even though, as you'll see, when we think about education, it's not just directed to you, it's also directed to younger and more senior people. With this, I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Reuben Babai, who is at the School for Neuroscience Education, Department of Neuroscience Education here at Tel Aviv University. No, I made a mistake already.
I'll show this.
And the Sagol School of Neuroscience.
Okay.
I don't know how to switch.
Thank you. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. I'm from the Department of Science Education in the School of Education. I've been there for many years. I work in collaboration with Ruth on the topics that I will present here. I present our view and some of our data. And recently, as of last year, I joined the Sagol School of Neuroscience, and I would like to use this opportunity, instead of talking about neuroscience education, to talk about neuroscience in education, or better said, neuroscience and education, and to show you how neuroscience education is connected to neuroscience and education. This is a topic that is recently called in the literature educational neuroscience. And what I would like to do is to give a brief description, a brief overview of this interdisciplinary domain for about 2 to 3 minutes, with some take-home message, some tips, some hints that might attract you. And later on, spend about 7 or 8 minutes describing several types of study we've done, just to show you a possible way of using this tools, or this neuroscience tool or neuroscience methodologies to study neuroscience and education. And we'll end with a short discussion and some conclusions, and again the take-home message. So, in my view, neuroscience and education has a great potential for raising the knowledge and the interest of general public in neuroscience, since the general public regards education as highly important. A survey that was done in Israel about 5 days ago pointed out that 74% believe that education is the most important factor for nation strength. This is some phrases that we use in Israel. You all know that education is relevant in everyday life, and there are plenty of teachers. About 120,000 that were active teachers last year from the information that has come from the Ministry of Education. So, these teachers could potentially have the knowledge about brain structure and function, and they could transfer it to others. I'm trying to use an optimistic view here, because sometimes teachers have some misconceptions and wrong knowledge that can transfer to others as well. So let's use an optimistic view over this talk. So this interdisciplinary domain, in a way, is also innovative, so it could attract the general public. At the moment, neuroscience and education are really far apart. In each domain, there's not a lot of knowledge about the other domain. And one way of bridging this gap is by collaboration between experts in both domains, educators, educational researchers, and cognitive neuroscience. This is what I would like to stress out today. And this collaboration could contribute to education and to cognitive neuroscience, both theoretically and practically. And we see it as a two-way road, not a one-way road in which information drives from neuroscience to education. Okay. Obviously, one needs to address issues that are important to both domains and use proper tasks. This is an example of an improper task, I would say. Find X. Tasks that are educationally relevant, possibly serve as a model system, and may later be used in school setting. And this is the tips I would like to give you in the domain of science and mathematics education, a domain that I'm in. There are many well-studied tasks that could be used in such research. And also, keep in mind that students have a lot of difficulties in science and mathematics education, so it is relevant to study these things in this domain. Okay. Well, what I would like to do now is to describe our studies and show you how we study neuroscience in education. I would like to describe an fMRI study, a TDCS study, an intervention study, and later on discuss this talk with some take-home message points. But we'll start with a taste of the task that we are studying. So I'll give you several examples, and I need your participation here. It's not too difficult. Okay, so in each slide I'll show you two shapes, and your task is to compare the perimeters. The perimeters are the lines that surround the shape. And your task is, for example, to decide if the left shape has a larger perimeter. And if you think that the left shape has a larger perimeter, it's quite easy. Just raise your left hand. Okay? If you think that the right shape has a larger perimeter, please raise your right hand. And if you think that both perimeters are equal, just clap your hands once. Okay? let's try this slide, this pair of shape. The correct response here is excellent. Okay. Try to work as accurately and as quickly as possible, and do the best that you can. Okay. Are you ready? Yes. Excellent. Okay. So pair 1. Excellent. Second one. Ooh. Okay. Third one. Excellent. Fourth one. Okay. Now, you might think that this task is very simple, it's very complex. It doesn't demand knowledge. But let's take a look at the correct responses, okay? So in this case, you got it correctly. The perimeter is larger on the left side, okay? In this case, most of you raised your left hand, but the correct response is equal, okay? In this case, almost all of you raised your left hand, but the correct response is equal, okay? And the fourth one here, you got it correctly. So what you understand from this example is that although the task is simple and requires no specific mathematical knowledge or specific skill or special skills, some of the examples are even difficult for educated adults, and I can regard you as one. Okay, so just to make a long story short, previous studies suggested that the irrelevant automatically or intuitively processed salient quantity in this task is the area, causes interference. When comparing the perimeters, well, you actually show reasoning of the type larger area, larger perimeter, so your responses are the places where there's a larger area, there's also larger perimeter, and this is unavoidable. Okay? This is an intuitive interference, and it is an intuitive interference of a salient quantity that is found in many other tasks in science and mathematics, so this could serve as a model system. And our actual goal is to unveil the reasoning processes associated with intuitive interference and how we overcome it, and that's what I would like to show you now. Okay, so we start with an fMRI study. We wanted to explore the neural correlates of this interference. This is a study done in collaboration with Vinod Goel, Hugo Critchley, and Ray Dolan in England. And we used congruent and incongruent condition. This is an incongruent, this is a congruent trial, and this is obviously an incongruent trial. And participants were asked to compare the parameters SU, and we measured accuracy of responses, reaction time, and brain activity. And what you can see is that the behavioral results, significant effect of congruity with regard to reaction time of correct responses and with regard to accuracy of responses. And this should not surprise you after your own responses. Okay. With regard to the brain imaging results, we would like to see if the congruent condition specifically activate different areas than the incongruent one, what happens when you answer the incongruent correctly. And again, just to make a long story short, what we found in the brain activity of congruent versus incongruent trials, enhanced activity in the bilateral parietal areas that are known to be involved in perceptual and spatial processing, and we think that this activity is likely to reflect the automatic processing of the intuitive variable area, the unavoidable intuitively processing of the variable area, the irrelevant salient task feature. And when we do the other way around comparison and look at the brain activity in the incongruent versus the congruent condition, we found enhanced activity in bilateral prefrontal areas in association with overcoming the intuitive interference, because we study here correct responses. And this activity is likely to reflect the inhibition of the processing of the relevant variable area. Okay. So the findings suggest that control mechanisms play an important role in overcoming intuitive interference, and in order to better understand the involvement of such mechanism, we conducted a TDCS study. And the question here is, will prefrontal cortex stimulation improve participants' ability to overcome intuitive interference? And this study was done in collaboration with colleagues in Zurich. And we used the pre-post test design with control and experiment group. And the experimental group got anodic stimulation, TDCS anodic stimulation in the right prefrontal region. This was the area that was mostly active in the fMRI study. And we used 4 types of problems. You notice that the complex incongruent condition is the most difficult even for you. So we expect to see if there are any improvement due to the anodic stimulation. And what we find in the experimental group, compared to test 1 and test 2, there is a significant improvement in the incongruent complex condition from 64% to 79%. And if you look at the responses in the control group, you see no difference from test 1 to test 2. This is after sham treatment. Okay? So even if you do the test again, there's actually no improvement. The intuitive interference is still there and it is very robust. Okay, so it seemed that stimulating the right prefrontal cortex improved participant ability to overcome intuitive interference. It is possibly due to activation of inhibitory control mechanisms or maybe other relevant cognitive functions. And what we set out to find in this study, we're going back to school children. The fMRI and the TDCS study were done on adults. So in the intervention study, we examined whether activation of inhibitory control mechanism would improve students' performance, school children performance. And we activated student control mechanism by providing an explicit warning on the possible interference of the variable area. And we did this with only one slide that was found at the beginning of the reaction time comparison of perimeter task. And the slide said the follows: pay attention, you're requested to compare the perimeters and not the area of the two shapes. There's a tendency to compare the areas of the shapes instead of their perimeter, and this tendency may lead to errors, and try to overcome this tendency. Only this slide was the difference between the experimental, the intervention group, and the control group. This was done in 6th graders that were randomly divided into warning and control groups, and these are the results of this study. This is the warning group results. And this is a control group, and from each you can see the rate of accuracy of responses and the reaction time in seconds. And what you can clearly see that accuracy in the warning group was significantly higher in both incongruent conditions. This is another incongruent condition, which is quite difficult for kids, but not for adults. It's incongruent inverse condition, where one shape has a larger area, but the other has a longer perimeter. So from 35% to 59%, or from 19% to 33%. And also what you can see that is a reaction time in the warning group was significantly longer in all conditions. And our conclusion is that this short focus and minimal warning intervention significantly improved student accuracy of responses. And we think that the explicit warning regarding the trap in the task appears to activate inhibitory control mechanisms and thus help students. And the effect is general to all comparison of a perimeter condition because the longer reaction time was found in all 3 conditions, even in the congruent one. Okay. So to summarize this short talk, overall, irrelevant silent variables strongly interfere with formal logical reasoning, leading to difficulties in science and mathematics. And this interference is robust, and it is evident in different content domains across different age groups. You can see we had your example, your responses, but we studied many other tasks that I can describe later on if you like. We used cognitive psychology and neuroscience methodology that revealed that executive control mechanisms have a key role in overcoming this intuitive interference. They probably inhibit the processing of the salient irrelevant variable and thus prevent its effect. An intervention that strengthened executive control mechanisms significantly improved student performance. Our findings indicate the importance of control mechanism, and they point to the possibility of improving student performance by simple interventions aimed at raising their awareness. And we think that this intervention could be in addition to supporting of relevant content knowledge, which is the traditional practice in school. And such a research-based simple intervention appears to require only teacher knowledge and awareness. And just to end up, we also demonstrate that applying cognitive psychology and neuroscience methodologies in science and mathematics education research can contribute to science and to mathematics education and to cognitive neuroscience, both theoretically and practically. And we believe that the construction of direct links between brain data and education practice is important for both sides, and this requires the collaboration, as I said, among educational researchers and cognitive neuroscience. And with that, I'll end. Thank you very much.